Hello everyone. In this video I'd like to show the work I have done to analyse the results of the UK's 2024 parliamentary election. I have enriched these results by blending them with the index of multiple deprivation data, which gives us a much better idea of the electorate makeup for each constituency. First, let's talk more about the index of multiple deprivation, LSOAs, and constituencies.
The index of multiple deprivation is an overall relative measure of deprivation constructed by combining 7 domains of deprivation according to their respective weights. These indices are shown at LSOA level. LSOAs, lower layer super output areas, are small areas of roughly equal population size. There are 32,844 LSOAs in England. The index of multiple deprivation domains are income deprivation, employment deprivation, education, skills and training deprivation, health deprivation and disability, crime, barriers to housing and services, and living environment. Each domain has a decile, a rank, and a score. An LSOA with a rank of 1 is most deprived, with a rank of 32844, least deprived. Deciles are calculated by ranking all LSOAs and dividing them into equal groups. LSOAs in decile 1 are the 10% most deprived nationally. Those in decile 10 are the least deprived. The UK Parliament consists of 650 members of Parliament, each representing a constituency, which is an electoral area. The main political parties in the UK are Conservatives, Labour, Liberal Democrats, Green, Reform UK, Plaid Cymru, and Scottish National Party. The 2024 election returned a majority Labour government, but it also signalled the growth of 2 political parties, Green and Reform, which played a part in changing the political landscape. So we can ask some questions. Was there anything of note in the constituencies that voted for these emerging parties? Were there deprivation or demographic factors that played a part in a constituency's electoral outcome? I have blended several government data sets to join the election results to the index of multiple deprivation data. In particular, there is a map between the government constituency code and the LSOA code. This creates a join between both data sets, providing a demographic and deprivation picture for each constituency. As we can see from the diagram, a constituency maps to several LSOAs, each of which has the index of multiple deprivation measures. Well, the time has come to see this data in action. We will be visualizing this data via MicroStrategy library. First, we will use a dashboard that will illustrate how the election results and the index of multiple deprivation data are combined. Well, let's look first at the lovely cathedral town of St Albans, which is north of London. So let's select St Albans. There it is. So we click on St Albans, and the dashboard displays the map with the LSOAs mapped on them. We can see the constituency results. So it was a Liberal Democrat hold. So St Albans is a Liberal Democrat town. There's a summary of the population. The voting details. So we can also see who voted for what, or how many people voted for different parties in that constituency. We can also see which party came second in the constituency. So we see that overwhelmingly it was the Liberal Democrats, okay, with the Conservatives next, then Labour, then Reform UK, and then Green. Okay, so that's the election data. Let's have a look now at the index of multiple deprivation data. So let's click on this tab here. And that shows us for the overall index of multiple deprivation, the LSOAs, so that's all these dots on the map there, classified by decile. And we can see that overwhelmingly, most of the LSOAs are in the least deprived deciles of St. Albans, and that the lowest decile is decile number 3, which means that for some deprivation, we have one LSOA that is at level 3 in decile 3. Okay, so what we can also do with this is have a look a bit more at what type of people and what type of areas comprise the St. Albans constituency. So you can see social renting young families, urban cultural mix, multi-ethnic suburbia, self-sufficient retirement. And we can also look at the type of area. So that's a classification of the type of area that you can see in St. Albans. So you can click on one of these and locate therefore the LSOAs that correspond to that particular area. Likewise, if I wanted to see the most affluent areas, the least deprived areas of St. Albans, I will click on decile 10 here, and that's where all the good, the high, least deprived deciles exist. Okay. So what we can also do is look at a bit more detail at what the measures are. So we've got IMD decile here. If we want, then we can have a look at education decile. And again, overwhelmingly, most of the LSOAs are in the least deprived decile. Let's have a look at employment. Bit more of a mixed picture, but still, a lot of LSOAs in the higher deciles. If we look at adult skills decile, yes, a bit more of a mixed picture, but still very much in the higher deciles. And the lowest decile that we see there is decile number 4. Okay, so that's the picture for St. Albans. Not far from London, direct links to the capital, good employment, good education. Well, that painted quite a rosy picture, didn't it? But is that the case all over the country? I think not. We're going to have a look at an area now that has significant challenges. So, goodbye, St. Albans. Let's now go and have a look at a town on the North Sea called Grimsby. So, Grimsby used to be a major fishing port on the North Sea and has been declining for quite some time. And you can now see that the distribution of deciles is quite different. But let's do this in the right order. Let's first of all check out the constituency. And we could see that it is a Labour gain from Conservative. So that was Conservative prior to the election and has now become Labour. Let's look at the voting details. So what happened here? Well, we see that Labour has 15,000 votes, a majority of 4,000. The Conservatives substantially less, but Reform UK scored quite a large score there. Okay, and you can think that it would probably have remained in Conservative hands had Reform UK not existed, because that's where quite a lot of Reform voters come from. They come from the Conservative voters. So that's Grimsby for you. Let's have a quick look then at the LSOA distribution by decile, because that was quite significant. And we can see that by and large, most of the LSOAs sit in decile number 1, the most deprived decile nationally. Okay, with very few sitting in the higher areas. Okay, so let's check now adult skills. Similarly, the most deprived LSOAs. Let's have a look at education. Same picture. Let's look at employment. Slightly better, but not by much. So we can see effectively that Grimsby is a stressed area, so an area with a lot of deprivation. If we look at how the areas stand, we can see that a lot of non-metropolitan suburban areas traditional countryside, so quite a mix. If we look at the people type, then we see a slightly different makeup from St Albans. Young, hard-pressed families, white suburban communities, transitional Eastern European neighbourhoods. So Grimsby, not the same as St Albans. Despite it being a seaside town, it's effectively a declining fishing port on the east coast of Great Britain. Well, that IMD data certainly put the grim into Grimsby, eh? What I like about this dashboard is that I can zoom around England and delve into the relationship between deprivation and electoral results. But that's just one way of looking at the data. Another way is to connect our data set to MicroStrategy AI and discover insights from a different perspective. Well, here we are. So we're inside what's called a bot. This is a manifestation of MicroStrategy AI. You can see down this side, you can see the data set with all the elements that we can include in our questions. Okay. The bot is called Enhanced Laura K. That's after Laura Kunsberg, who is a celebrated political commentator working for the BBC. Okay. I hope she'll forgive me for using her name. Right. So there's a question I asked earlier, which was to show me the constituency name that voted green and the LSOA count by education decile and color by education decile. Okay, so it's produced this graph there, which shows the four constituencies that voted green in the election. And there you have the deciles. So this is decile number 10, and there are 14 LSOAs for Brighton, 24 LSOAs in education decile 10 for Bristol. North Herefordshire is a slightly more rural area, but still the education level is quite high. We only have one LSOA in the education decile of 1. Waveney Valley is more, again, sparsely populated, but we have a good concentration in the middle deciles for education LSOA. So that gives us the picture for education for the areas that voted green. So what we're going to do now is we're going to change the metric. Okay, so I'm replicating the question there. And what I want now is I want to see, we're going to look at adult skills decile. I'm going to ask it to color by adult skills decile. Okay, off we go. So that's gone off and asked MicroStrategy AI to go and fetch the results for us. And here we are. So there we see that as far as adult skills are concerned, well, the results are quite telling, is that we have 37 LSOAs for Brighton Pavilion in adult skills decile 10. Similarly, we've got 38. The distribution is slightly wider for the rural constituencies, but still the concentration is quite high in that level. Okay, so now let's have a look at employment. So again, let's ask the question again. Let's edit this. Employment decile. Color by employment decile. And there we are. Again, a high number of LSOAs in the higher deciles, so we don't really have a concentration in the lower ones. We can see a trend between what are city-based constituencies like Brighton and Bristol, okay, and the more rural ones where the spread of LSOA is slightly greater, but generally skewed towards the higher deciles. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're just going to rewind up a bit. We're going to pick that query. We're going to pick the ones for education. So we're just going to repeat that down there. But instead of saying green, we're going to say Reform UK. And let's send that off. So as you can see, the results have come back and we have really quite a different picture. So these are the 5 reform constituencies. And you can see that the education decile are pretty much all in the lower ranks. Okay, so decile 1, 15 for Ashfield, for Boston, 21 for education decile 1, and so on and so forth. Okay, so let's look at another metric for the reform voting areas. Let's look at adult skills. So again, you have the same picture with a lot of LSOAs in the lower deciles across the whole picture. Okay, so now we'll just look at one final metric for the reform voting areas. We'll look at employment. So you've got a slightly mixed picture there, in as much as this constituency here, South Basildon and East Thurrock, is very close to London. Therefore, there's good access to employment. But when it comes to the other areas, I mean, Great Yarmouth, Clacton, Boston's, Kegness, they're mostly on the east coast of the UK. Ashfield is not far from Leeds, and again, quite an isolated area. And pretty much apart from South Basildon, all the distribution is in the lower deciles for the employment LSOA. It wasn't in my remit to draw conclusions about the data I've just shown you. Rather, I wanted to show correlation between electoral outcomes and a deprivation picture. Did I succeed with that? Well, different people in different circumstances will come to different conclusions. I will continue to think of other questions to ask, and if I find anything interesting, I will share it with you. So thank you for listening and watching, and goodbye.